Okay, I think I'm good. Hello, good morning, afternoon, time zone, wherever you guys are. How's it going? It is 8:15 Eastern, and I can go until about 9:45 today. So, thank you for joining me if you're here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I think this is going to be one of the first times in a long time we're going to basically see a model go from 0 to 100, or 0 to completion. So, I'm going to try and do that. Obviously, my sinuses are still kicking my butt, but I will try my best. And speaking of, I'll be right back. I'm going to blow my nose. Much apologies for the post-nasal trip issue, as there always has been, but let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Main camera, goodbye to those two, and we are good to go. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I've got these heads that I need to finish up on. I'm going to hit this with a wash of Reichland Flesh Shade, and then I'm going to do the same to all of the Custodes armor, but I'm going to water it down so it just creates kind of a reddish tint on it to make the gold glow a little warmer than what it currently is. With this guy, though, it's just going to go on completely undiluted, and we'll see how that looks. Which honestly should be fine. All it's doing is providing some ruddiness to his overall color. And there we go. And I'm going to do the same thing to her. Just give her a slightly more flushed appearance. And then, at some point, I will go back and actually paint in her eyes, because I have yet to do that. Clean that out, because you don't need it in your actual eyes. And that looks good to go. I'm going to stick that on there so there's a chance to dry. Now, I'm going to work my way through all the Custodes. I suppose the good news is that for the Custodes, they already have kind of a warm tint to them. So if I do this appropriately, all I'll have to do is water it down a little bit, and I'll be able to get this nice kind of warm glow to come off of these guys, which is, you know, the general purpose use for washes anyway. But as always, the issue is if I put it on too thick, it'll coffee stain all over the model, which is not what we want. So hopefully, just having this very, very light wash will bring back some of the orange tint, some of that like nice warmth that was lost as I went further up the color wheel, or the brightness scale, or whatever it's called. I'm sorry, I'm not much of an artist, I don't know these things. But the good news is, it's just a very small modification to the paint scheme that'll bring a whole lot back to it. Okay. And as always with washes, they're only meant to really fill in the gaps and provide a unifying color, so you don't want to go too heavy with it, and you don't want the wash liquid to end up in weird places that don't make sense. So you've got to kind of push it into the gaps where you want it to stay. Because if you just leave the wash hanging out on flat surfaces, it obviously doesn't look that great, right? But if you do it right, the washes provide quite a bit of depth and quite a bit of color to the mini. So that's all I'm going to work on right now. And so that way some of the gaps that end up being kind of a colder brown can end up having a little bit more to them. And again, I don't want to put it on very heavy-handed. The whole goal here is to just add a tint of warmth to the armor, not necessarily change the armor's color, right? So I'm definitely putting it on very, very light with a deft hand. And hopefully, when I finish, it will make everything... One moment. Okay, I'm back. But if you give me a second, I need to go do a chore real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. My wife was kind enough, Hubie was kind enough to bring down the laundry, so I went ahead and started the laundry. Oh, I forgot to get one of his little body glove bits. At least it's an easy section of the armor to do. But let's go ahead and hit all of the Guardian Spear now. And there are parts of the Guardian Spear that I'm obviously not going to keep this gold. That I'm going to hit again with a black to bring it back a bit. But for right now, I figure I'll just hit everything with this wash, and then I can fill in the rest of the details a little bit later. There we go. Now, hopefully what that should have done... Uh-oh, everything's lagging a little bit. That's strange. Hey, Darkvolt, how's it going? I'm adding a little bit of Reichland Flesh Shade to try and bring some warmth to the armor. And I feel like it's working okay. The one with the spear has the Reichland wash on it, a very thin version of it, and the shield one does not. So I feel like it makes the gold glow a little bit more, and that of course is a good thing. That one's going to go over here. So yeah, how was your day? How did the rest of your day go? Mine, I saw some of the stuff you posted. I think I should get that one. I missed the old Ogre Flesh Wash. I wouldn't know. This is I didn't start the hobby until, good gravy, 2018, 2019. So I have no idea what some of the older washes were. I just know it was a really weird moment when Games Workshop started introducing new washes, and I think they discontinued some old ones, and a lot of the old heads were just like, first time. I do know that I do really like the washes. I think they were a wonderful idea, and they definitely help make, you know, these paint jobs look a whole lot better. Oh, that one went on too heavy, but that's okay. Push it towards the crevices. But yeah, having this stuff really helps with you know, unifying a color scheme, and I definitely appreciate that. And for a while I was like, I wonder why people call Nuln Oil liquid gold, because I didn't quite get it, and it took a while for a friend to really introduce it to me. Back when I first got into the Warhams and the mini painting, I thought that just having the base coats on them was good enough. And it was like, this will be fine. It looks great. I don't want to put any more effort into this. That took a lot of time. And then the buddy was like, you need to get some Nuln Oil, because that'll really make everything pop. And I was just like, that seems like an awful lot. The washes were something entirely new. Before that, they had the opaque paint box and hex bottles. After getting back into the hobby, the entire selection of base layer, glaze, etc. was overwhelming. Yeah, that's kind of how it felt when I first got in, because it did feel like they had a ton of different paints, and the distinction between them wasn't very clear. Were the layer and the glazing paints added as a response to like the rising trend of miniature painters doing those things already? Because that's kind of what it feels like keeps happening, is that they find that the Warhammer community or the mini painting community has found a new technique that makes their stuff look better, and then they're like, we should release something like that. It would make a lot of people happy, and it would give funnel more money back to us. And then that's what they do. Or maybe I've got it backwards. Maybe they introduce a new thing, and then people start responding, and then it takes the nomenclature. I don't know. Because I remember with contrast paints, people started using those and doing things like slap chop with them, and this, that, and the other. But I'm coming from a very limited perspective here, and very limited exposure. Yeah, I really like what this red shade is doing to these things. I get that. I just tend to get my base colors I need for the army and some primary colors for mixing. I do like using some of the primary color contrast for mixing. Darcy Bono did a really good video on using contrast paints as kind of like a shade glazing agent over a dry brush. Kind of the slap chop method, but not quite. And she did it for making Imperial Fists yellow. And I thought it was a really good one because it gave a lot more depth to the Imperial Fist yellow than just that like Velveeta cheese looking orangey yellow that they typically have. So, oh, there's some coffee staining. I meant to say I do like using the contrast also for primary color mixing. Yeah. I gotcha. So it's always kind of neat to see how artists respond to new product and how they manage to engage with it creatively. Because I'm not that bright, I'm not that creative. So watching people who are far more creative and innovative than me come up with new ideas is neato. Speaking of coming up with new ideas, and this is kind of a sloppy segue, training at Best Buy sucks. Admittedly, training at any large corporate entity kind of sucks because they have to streamline it so literally anyone can join. But they're eventually going to have me physically following someone, which is fine. That's what I figured would happen. But right now they've got me sat in front of a computer watching out, video after video of corporate speak. And I get they do it for legal reasons to make sure all bases are covered, but it's so deadly dull. Admittedly, it has improved tremendously since I last worked in retail, which was over a decade ago at Lowe's. Geez, longer than a decade ago. That was almost 20 years ago. But it's still some kind of form of torture. What I lately do with my reds is I use a bone color, wash it with a brown, touch it up with edge highlights up to a white, and ball red contrast all over it, then some finer edge with orange-white mix. That's really good looking. That gives it that nice warm undertone and some more color depth and texture than just using a straight red. That's really cool. I'll have to remember something like that. Okay, the Guardian Spear has this nice red wash on it now. But yeah, I don't know if you've ever worked corporate retail, but those training videos, it's when they make fun of them in cartoons and television, they're not very far off. they try and make them entertaining while also informative, and it's a whole thing. And I mean, I'm a 36-year-old former school teacher. I can't imagine being a teenager having to watch these things. But who knows? Maybe it's not as bad because it seems to be more targeted at them. But then again, so is school. I want to see if I can build me a free tactical marine and try out doing a yellow. I got the first Imperial Fist contrast. It's a good contrast. You will not be disappointed. I think Games Workshop knows, or they've got it at this point. They know about the yellow being an impossible color to paint meme. So when they made their Imperial Fist contrast, they knocked it out of the park. They did a really good job. So yeah, kudos, good luck to you with getting that, or with using that, because it will surprise you at how nice and easy it is, because you legitimately can just prime it white and then hit it with the contrast and it'll look great. I mean, I've been through much worse. I'm getting paid to sit in front of a computer and do video lessons. It doesn't get much better than that in terms of effort to compensation ratio. And again, it's no worse than any other training I've ever done. A pink undercoat for shading is lovely, especially with like Averland Sunset or another just base yellow. It brings a whole lot of color depth to the mini that otherwise wouldn't be there, and it definitely pulls the richness out of the yellow in a good way. In fact, I think I've got some Imperial Fists that are undercoated in yellow. Give me a second. Okay, so I think those guys were hit with that. Maybe I don't. That's okay. Well, if I recall properly, I think this is what the Imperial Fist contrast looks like using Darcy Bono's method, with a lot of dry brushing. But honestly, I don't remember. It's been too long since I painted some of these. But you can see just how incredibly saturated that yellow is. And it's just phenomenal. In the meantime, this is an Imperial Fist that I'm pretty sure I undercoated in brown. And I used I used Vallejo Gold and Yellow. And you can see just how much richer this Imperial Fist looks compared to this one. So there's definitely a pretty steep contrast in terms of how saturated it is. Where did I get this last from? I believe that's the one I did with the Darcy Bono method. What else do I got? I know for a fact I've got some purple or pink shaded ones somewhere. Give me a second. Let me check my army box. Army box. Yeah, I think this is it. I think the aggressors that I did were, yeah, you can kind of see it. I believe they were shaded pink. You can kind of see a little bit of it in the shadows. Like you can see in the crook of the arm that there's like a pink undershading. And again, I used Vallejo Gold and Yellow, so the yellow is definitely a little more dull, but it's nowhere near as dull as on that one that I just showed you. Last thing I painted yellow was a Blood Angel Jump Pack Assault Guy's helmet, and I got strong brush marks and thick layers. Yeah, you kind of got to paint yellow very thin for it to work right. But yeah, I also covered this guy in a wash, so everything is even more strongly diluted down. But I personally prefer the slightly more dulled down yellow versus the really rich one, because I feel like it fits a little better. But that's purely opinion. Like all of it looks good. The other one that I did that to? What did I do with? No, I just did a good job. No, that's the only one I can find off the cuff. So, I hope that it turns out good for you. I think it will, just by the nature of the yellow underpainting, undercoating doing a good job. But yeah, Games Workshop has come a long way with how their yellows perform. And if you're really good about thinning it down, it's going to look fantastic. So you can be, especially with the Imperial Fist contrast, you can be sure about that. Good luck. I love Imperial Fists, and at first I thought yellow was a stupid color, and then I realized just how striking it was on a Space Marine, and now I'm all in on it. I very rarely paint other color Space Marines. I've painted a couple of salamanders for a friend, and honestly that green is also really striking, but I'm all in on the yellow, baby. Okay, I probably ought to hit that too with... Okay. Just looking at all the little details that I either missed or overlooked on these guys. And thankfully it doesn't seem to be that many. And what is there is still very visible for me to just kind of go over with it. Like I have easy access to the pieces, which is definitely a good thing. More contrast. Or more shade. Wash, whatever it's called. There we go. Mix that in, hit it there, hit the gold there on the eagle. Now hopefully if I do this right, everything will have just a very slight warm tint to it, as opposed to being overwhelmingly heavy-handed with the red wash. When I got introduced to Dark Angels, I was bummed that it was all green. I expected to do blue like the poster boys, but the model I picked up just spoke to me so much I stuck with the green and it grew on me. That's a good feeling. Yeah, I understand. Listening to it a little more and listening to people talk about it, I understand why the Ultramarines were chosen as like the mascots. You know, blue is generally the least disliked color. It's easy to paint. As an army, they're pretty middle of the road and versatile. So it just stands out. It just stands out that they would be the central Space Marine type for 40k. So yeah, I hate them a lot less than I used to. I used to have a lot of disdain for the Ultramarines, just kind of as a reactionary thing. Okay. Let's see, this guy's almost done already. The only thing I dislike about the Ultramarines is that they have a strong Roman aesthetic and they are presented as the default. Yeah, that's fair. They've kind of gone... It seems to me like they've kind of moved away from the Roman aesthetic in terms of how they're presenting the 40k stuff. And they started leaning into it more for the 30k stuff, which is fair. And Arbiter Ian brought up in one of his videos, and I thought this was kind of neat, that like near the end of the Firstborn line, Marines were starting to become very ornate and very complicated. And so having all the fiddly details, having all these things to worry about, kind of became an intimidating thing for new painters. And so the Primaris line allowed them to reset on a lot of that. And I can definitely appreciate that it stripped the Marines back down to their core silhouette, which makes them a lot more accessible to newer painters, newer players. And it makes them feel like you're less locked into a specific aesthetic. The big shapes definitely help. The fact that they're more proportionate definitely helps. I was kind of tickled to find out that, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting the man's name? He did like all of the key art for 40k that made it into that specific grimdark look. John Blanche. He really likes the Primaris line for those reasons. He didn't like how fiddly and ornate they were getting, and just how tiny they were. And I don't remember the stream or the YouTuber's name, but they recently did a series of interviews with John Blanche about the growth of 40k and a bunch of neat topics, and one of them was on the art for the Space Marines. And that was something he explicitly mentioned. He doesn't like the Ultramarines, which I also thought was kind of silly. He thinks the Black Templars are neat because he's the one who kind of gave them their key visual, connotation. Because, like, the 3rd edition cover, according to him, was the first real representation of the Black Templars. And so, when he saw them, he saw that they had the Maltese cross, and that really helped him evoke the Teutonic Knight look that he ended up giving them in that 3rd edition key art. Because before then, they were just Space Marines in black armor. I don't know if it's a Blanche art, but today I found my Black Reach box, and was stuck for a half hour admiring the art on it. I'll have to check, because he just recently retired, like, late last year. So, so Blanche probably did the key art on some of that stuff. But then again, he also has like a super distinct colored pencil looking sketchy design, so it might not have been him. It might have been the other key artist that he mentioned in the video, whose name escapes me right now. But he seems to be very, very proud of the work he did, and he looked back on pretty much all of it fondly. So I was pretty jazzed to see that he had a lot of positive experiences at GW. I checked the White Dwarf book I got leading, and it dates to 2008. Yeah, he would have been working at Games Workshop there, but I don't know if it would have been his art. Give me a second. I'll look at it in a moment. After I finish wiping down all the gold on this guy. Okay. Well, actually, this will be this gal when I get to it. That's going to go down, so let's do a quick internet, shall we? Oh, someone's playing the South Park game. Assault on Black Reach box. I don't think that's a actually, no, that does look like it could be a artist. That does look like it could be a Blanche, but I don't know. What edition was Assault on Black Reach? That was 5th edition, yep, I know that much, but... Oh man, the minis that came with that are cool. And they're at exactly the right size for my liking, too. So it came with Terminators, Assault Intercessors, or I mean, not Intercessors, good lord. Fuck me. Tactical Marines and a Dreadnought, and then it came with a bunch of Arc Boys, Copters, and a War Boss. Yeah. I'm gonna be that guy and say that Warhammer Minis peaked at Assault on Black Reach. They're absolutely perfect in terms of size and everything. I love it. But yeah, I have no clue who did that art. That's a good piece of art right there. Hot damn. Oh. I hate the fact that temperature fluctuations and barometric pressure are what cause my eyes to go so crazy and my sinuses. I just got mesmerized seeing the pencil lines under the paint, seeing the strokes in the background, the colors chosen for the buildings, all the Marines so angy. Yeah, that feels like a Blanche. Like, he did the art for the 2nd edition, too, with the iconic Blood Angels on the front. That was all a John Blanche as well, which I was also not aware, because it doesn't look like a Blanche. But, that was before he kind of developed that iconic, sketchy, watercolory style that he's now really well known for. Okay, what's next? I think I need to pull black back out because there's still some bitty bobs that I have to do. And then I've got to go back and do some highlights for the leather. And at some point I should really move into doing like non-metallic metal, silver, and metal. And quite possibly some key parts of like the other metals on here. I don't know, my brain died. I need to do the gemstones, I need to do the purple for the cloaks and the plumes. There's a bunch of little works that I need to get done. But yeah, I feel like Assault on Blackreach's art is exactly what I envision and what I want to envision when I think of Warhammer. And I feel like, unfortunately, because Warhammer has had to grow in size, and the number of Marines, or the number of units in a squad has had to shrink due to cost constraints, that it's getting kind of lost in translation. Because I look at the art from the art books, or from the codexes, where it's just, you know, huge masses of bodies piled on top of each other. And they're in this, like, scrum, is what I think of when I think of Warhammer 40k. So, seeing that that doesn't really translate well to how the game is played is always a little bit disappointing for me. But that's purely a me thing. Okay, all that's good now. I could have sworn I had somewhere... There it is. And I don't know, maybe I just need to get into, like, Horus Heresy. Maybe that will, or Age of Darkness, or whatever it's called. Maybe that's where I need to get my bread and butter. In terms of, like, game feel. Because it seems like Horus Heresy and Age of Darkness is played with a considerably larger amount of minis to it. And that can become my next obsession. Because I'm far more interested in doing, like, lore-based games where there's a story to the battle than doing mission-based games where it's about scoring points. The whole thing kind of ran away from me. You plan on collecting an entire chapter? That's a lot of minis, man. Good luck with that. I believe in you, and I hope you can, but that's a huge amount of minis. I suppose the counterpoint is that you're still breathing, so you still have time. It's just probably going to end up being mixed in with some new Marines on top of that, unless that's a problem. But yeah, there are definitely some super cool pictures of people who have collected entire chapters of Space Marines, and it's so intimidating seeing how many there are. And then knowing that that's like a drop in the bucket in the Warhammer universe. You're just going to finish up your company? That's also fair. Like, that's kind of what I want to do with my Imperial Fists, but unfortunately, I've gotten far more into the habit of collecting, like, characters than individual, or than, units. So I've fallen way behind on that idea. Morning, Grishoot, how's it going? How are you doing? I'm having a slow wake-up, because I put a mattress topper back on my mattress, and it's making it real easy to be sleepy. And so, I had a bit of a slow start today, and now I'm here trying to do the details on these dudes so I can move on to do more interesting stuff. I only need 25 Terminators for first company, good lord. In terms of monies and costs, that's so much, but I understand what you mean. Made some good progress on your Connect VTuber. I saw you post! I didn't get a chance to actually click on it, but I did see that it was moving around and doing cool stuff, so you're right, you're in progress. Steps are being made. Congratulations. I'm excited to see what that's going to look like when it's done. Okay, let's paint all that black again. Go ahead and hit that. Just trying to return some of the stuff I dry brushed and paint it over back to more of a default state. This one doesn't have a head. Where did I miss? I also gave all of these a quick brush over with a wash to hopefully make the gold look a little more warm. I just buy a box of this the other month when I have the ability. I've got my collection over the years. And I think that's how it's meant to be done. And I definitely understand that GW has this really bad issue of FOMO. But I feel like, you know, they've got to keep releases interesting. They've got to keep releasing new models. But I feel like trying to follow along with that consumer line is financial suicide. Finished reading your first Discworld book yesterday. Ooh, which one? Which Discworld book have you used to introduce yourself to that wonderful, wonderful world? Color of Magic. Oh yeah, number 1 with Rincewind. That's an interesting one because it's definitely showing like where Pratchett wanted to start, and getting to see some of the relics of that era that he kind of moved away from when I guess he realized they were problematic. Because like Two Flower is definitely not okay as a character, but he managed to make him have more depth than just Japanese tourist analog. You hate the FOMO, my heart sinks every time I see the Land Speeder Vengeance out of stock. Yeah, I get that. I hate that they still have those things up. You're starting to light Fantastic today. That's another good one. I read all of the City Watch, and then I read Mort, and then I went back and I read and now I'm going back and reading the books in chronological. So I read Color of Magic, and I finished The Light Fantastic. I just finished Equal Rights, and I'm now working on the next book, which is I'm forgetting the name of. Are you listening to them on audiobook, or are you actually just like reading them? Audiobook? Are you using the newer publishing one where they've got like a lot of prestigious voice actors to portray and actors to portray the characters? Or did you find like the really old one with the single British comedian doing the voices? I did that for the light fan. Okay, so I will let you know right now the older voice actor, the older narrator has a completely different like tempo than the new ones. And I like it because it makes the humor feel punchy and everything feels very brusque. But I don't know. Good luck with it. I hope you enjoy it. Like because those were the ones I was able to find online. That's what I first started listening to, and I really like how it all sounds. So I've kind of stuck with it. I'm kicking myself for not starting them sooner. I knew it was something I'd not love. I never made time for them. Exactly, that's me. I've been hearing about how great Discworld is for decades, and just I hate being recommended things, and I still have a long-standing like petulance about it because I hated being told what to read in school. And so if someone recommends me a book or I hear a lot of effusive praise for it, I typically want nothing to do with it because I don't want to be sold on it. And so it takes until I decide for myself that I'm going to read it for me to actually read it. And I'd gotten tired with the Horus Heresy, and the Siege of Terra hadn't released their newest book, so I finally asked my buddy, who recommended me the Horus Heresy, hey, what should I read next? And he was like, you gotta read Discworld. I went, okay, you introduced me to Horus Heresy. I'm like 30 books into that, so I'll take your advice. Which one should I start with? And he suggested The Night Watch. And I went, okay, cool. And that's the one I started with, and I couldn't be happier, because The Night Watch is an absolute banger of a book that stands up really well on its own. And he also happens to be a little biased, because he really likes the Sam Vimes arc of books. So if you want to read something that's a little more mystery, crime, stuck in Ankh-Morpork, then you want to go into the City Watch books, because they're all really good. I did have a bit of a jarring moment, though, because they changed narrators. Once I got to the Discworld audiobooks I already have, I think I'm going to check out the other audiobooks for your local library. Good person. That's something I should have done, because the library is a resource that should be used. I did not do that. Much like a lot of other things I own, I acquired them. But, sorry, my brain just potatoed on me. About midway through the books, they started using another narrator. And it was an extremely jarring change because Sam Vimes in the early books is kind of like I don't want to call it nasally, but his voice definitely sounds like that of a slightly drunk, cowardly man. And I don't remember which book it is because it's not the Night Watch. But as his character becomes a stronger, more assertive character across the books, they change his or they change the narrator, and suddenly he becomes very just kind of crisp and assertive, and he loses any sense of simpering that he used to have. And it works for the character development. You have a library across the street from your house. That's awesome. I have one that's a couple blocks down that I pretty constantly neglect to go to. But I really should. I walked down there with QB to get a library card that I don't think she's used yet. But she now has it, so it's there for use. But yeah, he went from having a voice that sounds kind of like this to just being typical British man. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but it definitely shows the evolution of his character. Okay, what else do I gotta do? I think... Oh yeah, the leather straps. I want those to be a different color. I want the straps on his wrist, on his vambrace, to be black to further differentiate them. Uh-oh, I lost connection. That's not good. Main camera off.